Spotlight is proudly sponsored by HEC Media, St. Louis's home for arts, education, and culture.
Today on Spotlight, the first president to fly in an airplane, who it was and why it happened in St. Louis. Plus, how new moms can donate their placentas to support life well after birth. And then meet one of the talented artists that you'll see at the St. Louis Art Fair. But first, a unique look at St. Louis through a prism of watercolor. It's Sunday, and you're watching the multiple Emmy Award-winning Spotlight.
I'm showing my view of St. Louis, whereas a photograph is just photographing it. I can edit and make it the way I want it. At one time, I didn't have the city building here. At one time, it used to have Busch Stadium. Busch Stadium's gone where it used to be, and things have really changed. I am Marilyn Bradley. I'm an artist. I did all the illustrations for the book St. Louis in watercolor. Here is what I like. This is the one over at Faust Park.
Marilyn Bradley has been painting for over 60 years. Her favorite subject is St. Louis. Her first published book in 2008 was all about the city's architecture. This book, St. Louis in Watercolor, Living History in the Gateway City, digs into its past and its present.
This started out in St. Louis, and the bottle itself has evolved and moved from place to place. There was more than one bottle. So this one is downtown near the Arch, and it's one of the last left. And this all came from the World's Fair. I don't know if everybody knows that U-City really began because of the World's Fair.
There are over 100 paintings in the book, each with a story. Forest Park is younger than New York's Central Park, but 500 acres larger. The Boathouse Lake dates back to 1894, and we have 6,000 people to thank for digging it by hand for $1 a day. Eat Right on Choteau Avenue has been around since 1935. The diner was renovated in 2018, but COVID closed it completely.
The Lemp, naturally, everybody knows that it's haunted, but you can stay overnight. I don't know if people realize it. It's a guest house. This particular building has so much history. It was next door to the Demonel house. Demonel goes all the way back to Choteau, the same family. So the Lemps were next to it. But there has been a lot of suicides in the family for here, and even in this particular building. And I think that's why they consider this a ghost house.
She paints with watercolors, I paint with words.
Jennifer Grote-Peter is a wordsmith. She authored the stories in the book. Everyone knows St. Louis is rich in aviation history, but did you know that Charles Lindbergh actually got his start on a mail route from St. Louis to Chicago in a plane housed right here at the Historic Aircraft Restoration Museum?
And you look at the aircraft behind us and you may not realize that those shiny wings are fabric. You're in a fabric airplane. The scarf is blowing, trying to keep the castor oil off of your face, and then you ingest this castor oil, and we won't go into what that does to you later, but they don't cover it in flight school.
One of the stories reads like a true crime podcast. Webster Groves was founded on a homicide way back in 1896. One day, a man named Bertram got off the train from Chicago. A young teenager offered to help him with his luggage. After taking him to town, he stopped inside the local saloon to tell his friends of the well-dressed man with cash.
One of the boys suggested that they rob Bertram. And one of them had access to a gun, so he went home and got his gun. And they didn't know Bertram was also armed. And he shot one of them. So they shot back, and Bertram died on the spot.
At the time of the murder, Webster wasn't officially a town and had no police department.
The outrage continued in the town, and they're like, we need a police department. Let's be a town. So they incorporated as a city exclusively to hire police. And the second thing they did was start taxing saloons until they taxed them all out of business. And until about 2017, 2018, somewhere around there were no saloons in Webster.
What is now Laclede's Landing holds a lot of history. Its cobblestone streets are the only thing left from the original 1780 French settlement. As the urban legend goes, it also houses a haunted alley. Following the Great Fire of 1849, there was a cholera epidemic. People were dying in the streets. The cemeteries were full.
You've got nowhere to go with those bodies. So they started stacking them up in Clay Morgan's alley.
To this day, spirits, it is said, can be seen roaming the streets of St. Louis.
St. Louis has a beautiful future ahead of it, but we don't want to lose track of what we had. And I think that's what's important about the book. Marilyn tells a visual story. I give you a written story. But there's so many stories.
Like, comment, and subscribe to support arts, education, and culture. History Spotlight, brought to you by HEC Media and the Missouri Historical Society.
Hello, I'm Dr. Jody Sowell, president of the Missouri Historical Society in St. Louis, and this is History Spotlight. The first president to fly in an airplane was no longer in office when he took his first flight in St. Louis. Public historian Adam Kloppe tells us who it was and how it almost went horribly wrong.
So today, I think it's really hard for us to imagine the presidency without some of like the trappings of what is around the presidency, right? You think about Air Force One, and that is something that obviously was created much after the presidency, and St. Louis has a key role to play in the history of presidential flight. In 1910, Teddy Roosevelt, he's visiting the state of Missouri, and he's no longer the president. He had been replaced by William Howard Taft just a few years before, but he's still an incredibly powerful political figure in the United States. There's a lot of people that are seeking his endorsement. So in October of 1910, he's in Missouri, and he's here to, stump for other Republicans in the state. And he stops in St. Louis. He stops at a place called Kinloch Field, an aviation field, and he's stumping for various political causes. And one of the pilots who operates out of Kinloch Field approaches Teddy Roosevelt, and he asks the president, hey, would you like to go up in a plane? And this was not an approved thing. It's not like this went through many aides and went through all the testing and stuff. It was just a pilot who asked Roosevelt if he wanted to go. And Roosevelt, to the surprise of his aides, says, yeah, I'll go up. And before they can stop him, he's boarding Archibald Hoxie's Wright Flyer, and he's getting ready to go up into the air. And you gotta understand, this is incredibly dangerous. This is in the first 10 years of flight. There's not safety standards. Planes are crashing all the time. Pilots are getting killed or injured. In fact, this pilot, Archibald Hoxie, he gets killed just a few months after this in a plane crash. But he takes off with Roosevelt in the plane. They're up in the air for 3.5 minutes. And Hoxie knows he has some precious cargo on board, right? So he stays pretty low. He doesn't do crazy tricks. He sort of dips and dives a few times. But they do court disaster in the air. At one point, Roosevelt starts waving to the crowd below, and he almost hits an exhaust cord. And if he had hit that and tripped it, the engine would have died and the plane would have crashed. Hoxie sort of had to yell at him over the engine. He's like, please don't wave. But they land safely, and a reporter goes up and asks President Roosevelt, how was that experience? And he described it as one of the great experiences of his entire life. He was really taken with it. But Roosevelt is sort of an anomaly here. The first sitting president doesn't take a flight until FDR in the 1930s, and the president doesn't get a plane with his own call signal until 1953. That's when it's called Air Force One.
Next week on History Spotlight, discover how a deadly duel in 1817 highlighted the clash of honor and violence in early St. Louis history.
To learn more about the Missouri Historical Society, visit mohistory.org.
For original programming and award-winning content, explore hecmedia.org. Find all of your favorite genres, including the arts and sciences. Go in-depth with the latest research. Get insight into new technologies. Learn about breakthrough discoveries. Find it all in one place. Explore hecmedia.org.
Introducing Abby McLean's second child. The arrival of her newborn baby has been filled with all kinds of emotions.
We were all very excited because there hadn't been a girl for 23 years in our family. They told me at my 20-week ultrasound that I was having a baby girl. And from that day, literally, we started buying girl clothes.
Then Mom and Dad decided on the name Lucy.
This is my son. He was supposed to be Lucy, but he came out with different body parts. So this is baby no name.
Once getting over the shock of the surprise and realizing they don't have anything new that's blue.
We have a book that we're looking through right now to find a perfect name. We have a couple.
Abby's precious story about giving birth doesn't end here. There was something else different about this experience at Mercy Hospital St. Louis. It's a second blessing. Abby was offered the decision to donate her placenta in Mercy's newborn tissue donation program called the Beginnings and Blessings Program.
They came in, they talked to me, she gave me a little brief synopsis of everything and then left it up to me.
It's new in 2025 across Mercy hospitals in the Midwest. Donation is something Abby is very familiar with.
I am the supervisor of blood donor services here at Mercy St. Louis Hospital.
It's something her family takes great pride in doing.
I donate blood, Dad donates blood, very passionate about donating blood.
So when delivering her second child, now after much thought, is named Elias Allen Posey, the decision to donate her placenta was
no-brainer to donate my placenta.
Because it's an opportunity for her placenta to continue supporting life.
I mean, it's being taken out of me. It's free from me. Might as well donate it and do some good. They really talked about the burn unit. They can use my placenta for skin grafts. And, burns are a serious medical emergency.
In our region, Mercy St. Louis is the first. I am one of the people who tried to bring it to Mercy as a ministry. As far as I know, our neighbors are not engaging in this yet, but I hope that they will.
Dr. Margaret Markrander is Chief of Staff and practicing OBGYN.
The placenta is an organ that grows as the baby grows, and it surrounds the fetus and protects it. It's where the amniotic fluid is housed as well. And newborn tissue includes placenta, the amniotic sac. In our program, we're donating the amniotic sac, the amnion and chorion, which is that interface.
Placentas provide essential oxygen and nutrients to the developing baby, removing waste from the baby's blood, producing hormones to help the baby grow, and passing immunity from mom to baby. After birth, placentas are often discarded as medical waste.
I think it's exciting for Mercy to be offering it because it is something that we throw away but can be useful for patients, not only for wound healing but also for research. There's also a lot of regenerative medicine going on. Right now, there are studies that we use the amniotic membrane patches, which is the most common for wound healing, could be used for things for burn victims, decreasing pain in burn victims as well. We also talk about fast wound healing, but that pain component has been shown to be there. We'll see it in orthopedics. We have seen it in gynecology for adhesion prevention, non-healing diabetic foot ulcers. There are cells that don't have a sort of like a plan yet. They haven't been assigned sort of a job, but once we place it on the tissue, it has now been assigned a new job. Help wherever they're placed, which I think is pretty amazing.
Markrander says donating newborn tissue is at no cost for patients and can benefit many people.
I've heard up to 100, but I think, when you look at all the literature, they say about 20 people, and it depends on what you're using it for.
She says for moms who have chosen to donate, it's incredibly positive knowing the birth of their new bundle of joy is making a real difference for other people in need of help.
And then we also have some birth cloths that say, I may be small, but I already made a difference.
So we'll tell them how my placenta got donated and how it saved lives. I lost my father a year ago, and we were able to donate all his tissue. And we actually got a letter from the recipient of his sclera and like thanking us. And so like it just makes a difference.
Later on Spotlight, part of the botanical garden seen by very few people. Mark your calendars. The 2025 St. Louis Art Fair returns September 5th through the 7th. Get a sneak peek at the talent behind the canvas with HEC Media's Meet the Artist series. Before you even step foot at the fair, discover in-depth insights into each artist's creative process and what inspires their work. Watch now at youtube.com at Who Else Loves Art and look for the 2025 St. Louis Art Fair playlist.
My name is Jeremiah Andrew Jaja. I'm a hyperrealism artist. Primarily create drawings using charcoal and pencil on paper. Drawing and just general creativity has always been a childhood passion. I really wasn't looking forward to being an artist. I just loved drawing. And then I just saw I was very much interested in details whenever I draw, even if it's still life drawing, even though it's an apple, I just was very interested in capturing details. It became much more purposeful when at a point in my life I did have a skin condition called vitiligo, where you get spots on your face and your body and everything, but even if you cover every other part of your body, your face is still open. So I was quite conscious about that, but I really wanted to capture and stop hiding my face, kind of. So I decided to create a drawing that captured all the spots at that time of my life. So the drawing just went to a different level of therapy, of self-acceptance, So that was the very first time it meant a whole lot to me. That situation and that phase of my life really brought my drawing to a different purpose, So that was where me being an artist really started, in my opinion. So first of all, I think of a story I want to tell about my life. And then I think, do I want to use my image to tell the story, or do I want to use a friend's image? Do I want to use a baby? Do I want to use an adult? Do I want to use an animal? Yeah, I'm also a photographer, so I might either take the photograph myself to capture the emotion I want to capture. Then I use that reference photograph, and then I start using my pencil. Mostly I use brushes and charcoal powder or graphite powder. I work in layers. So when I capture the outline, I start putting tones, the light tones, the dark tones in layers, applying with my brushes and powder. Then I come back with my pencil and erasing to start detailing. My art right now is very dependent on the phase I'm in my life. So my artwork right now is mostly kids and animals. I'm in a very happy phase because I have a newborn. She's 9 months, but she's still new, So it has really inspired another phase of my life, the parenthood phase. Maybe in the next 2 years or next year, there might be another theme, based on how I want to express myself and my life. Just like when I started feeling like I'm an artist that's expressing my stories, right? It took me a minute to notice everybody has similar stories. They just experience it differently. So telling my story, someone relates to my story and can experience their own life story through my story. So that made me understand that my art is not just for myself. And when I create, people can relate to that. So I love to evoke those emotions that people can relate to and feel good about.
HEC Media. Recognized, celebrated, honored time and again for excellence in the industry. Find all of the award-winning content at hecmedia.org.
You can find the stories featured in today's show along with past episodes and more at hecmedia.org/spotlight.
From the native and familiar to the exotic and rare, the Missouri Botanical Garden has over 27,000 plants on permanent display. But there is another part of the garden, one that is seen by very few, that holds around 8 million specimens collected from all over the world. In stark contrast to the vibrant, living beauty found in areas like the Rose Garden or the Climatron, The plants at the herbarium are frozen in time, preserved at the moment of collection for research and reference.
Yeah, this is in from the savannas in Brazil.
The herbarium receives boxes every week filled with samples that need to be documented, described, and named. This process turns a dried plant into a specimen.
It's got a label that says where and when it was collected. It has an identification, and that's not always easy because the garden works in tropical areas where we're the first exploration and nobody's been there before. So I have to document the species, and that includes giving them scientific descriptions for the first time. And that's when you get to name them.
Botanist Charlotte M. Taylor holds the distinction of naming more species of plants than any other woman alive.
Charlotte is a legend. There's no other way of putting it. She has a great deal of expertise in plant taxonomy, so the classification of plants, especially in the coffee family. But she's also a really massive expert in plant nomenclature, which is a complex set of rules that have been put in place to make sure that plants are named correctly and consistently across the world in an unambiguous way.
So, of course, the burning question is, how is a plant's name chosen?
We have a code of nomenclature rules. Article 29.1, the name of a species is completely arbitrary and may be anything as long as it uses the Latin alphabet. We try to put something in it to remind people of what it is, you know, where it's from, what color the flowers are. We often name things for botanists because it's kind of an honor. A lot of people work hard and risk their lives, and this is all you get. You're going to name a species name for you, and hopefully it's a nice one. You know, sometimes it's an ugly one.
There's more to plants in the herbarium. There are a lot of stories of botanists, stories of places and the people and the cultures.
This is one from Ecuador. And this is named, it was discovered by my colleague David Neal, who has worked in Ecuador for 50 years. But he said that it's important in the indigenous communities down there that it has a sweetening effect like stevia does, and that they put it in drinks and things. And so we named it Dulcifolia, sweet leaf.
The herbarium's enormous collection, started in the 1840s, is a testament to the courage and tenacity of many botanists over the years.
I initially thought I was going to be pre-med, and then on a whim I took a field botany class and absolutely loved it. And I thought, well, there's no going back.
Heidi Schmidt's love of plants has taken her all over the world, from China to Madagascar, the harsh climates and sleeping rough, all part of the adventure.
I enjoy doing field work, personally. I love it. Field work has always been thought of as something like a male-dominated field because you need to be physically strong. Traditionally, women have not been thought as capable as men. And it's not just being physically strong, it's having other attributes too, the ability to recognize plants in the field, the ability to work well with others because you're in a field situation where not everyone is maybe from the same country. I have seen improvement. That's not to say that I'd like to see more.
Carmen Polisi's work has taken her to almost every country in Southeast Asia, collecting and teaching others the skill of plant identification.
It is actually less glamorous than it sounds. I usually go to remote places in forests and collect plants and press them, dry them, and then bring them back to my institution and to the local herbaria for study by specialists, including myself.
Just for the record, we do not work alone in any country. We work in collaboration with people in country, and our overall goal is capacitation so that people in those countries can take over doing this.
Charlotte spent years in the field herself, mostly in South America, before the garden decided to use her talents in a different way.
They changed my job to something I find super cool. I write reference books. I'm the person that writes the book that you need to use to identify plants and to do your ecological work. And about half of what I do is collect known information, and half of it is I figure out the things no one knows.
Charlotte works on Rubiaceae, or the coffee family. It's one of the largest in the plant world and has given her plenty of puzzles to solve.
One group of plants in my group is poisonous. They grow where the cattle are in Brazil and Colombia and Venezuela. And the cattle are not from South America, so they don't know what's good and what's bad. So they eat these plants, and there's a chemical in there, monofluoroacetate, that is as poisonous as cyanide. And so the cattle eat the plant and they fall over dead. Literally, there are pictures of them like lying there. And there are a lot of similar plants. So I went in to try to help identify. And my colleague from the Department of Agriculture, he was working with the Brazilians. And he took samples of this looking for poison, and we build sequentially on the work we do. So he put this label on saying who sampled it for chemicals when. So he analyzed our specimens. So we had documentation of what species grow where. I had the identifications on them, and he knows which ones are poisonous. To get from the one little level of data I take to a bigger picture of life and a bigger hypothesis and put more information together, it takes people who know different parts.
Heidi Schmidt added to her own taxonomy and systematics background and completed training in conservation assessment, allowing her and Charlotte to collaborate on work around the specimens collected in Madagascar.
And this is something that's very useful to sort of give people a broad idea of the risk of extinction for certain species. And so Charlotte was very interested in being able to include this information with all these new species that she's been describing. Madagascar is a very unique opportunity to work on a flora that's not very well documented, that is incredibly unique with almost 90% endemic plants to the island. It's an island that needs study now, and there's just so much baseline data we just don't have.
The immense amount of baseline data housed in the herbarium is an important form of record keeping, providing a view not just into a plant's past, but also into our planet's future.
Through historical collection, we have snapshots of what a given area would have been 200 years ago, 100 years ago, and then 50, 20, 10, 5 years ago. And monitoring the plant diversity also allows us to understand where we are going, how fast, and what direction, because they are the best indicators of environment or environmental change.
Though the work that Charlotte, Heidi, and Carmen are doing is important, they also put a lot of energy into encouraging and including those who historically have been overlooked or undervalued.
Science has always been a white male-dominated environment, and that means that there's a very restricted niche. I think that the solution to the problem is diversity.
I'm very much encouraged by the collaboration and team aspect that we have here at the garden. You want people to bring new ideas, and not only new ideas, but you want people to challenge you.
That's where you get originality, and that's where you get innovation.
We're all smarter together. People come in with the most surprising ideas because they lived a different life.
Next week, learn about a deadly duel in St. Louis history that happened back in 1817. Plus, hear from a Michelangelo expert who tells the story of the artist's final years. Thanks for watching Spotlight. Join us next Sunday at 9:30 a.m. on KPLR 11.